Another day, another disaster averted. You know, you'd think saving the city this often would get old. But honestly, the thrill never fades. Just a few minutes ago, I was pulling people out of a collapsing subway tunnel. The usual stuff. Shorted out electrical systems. A runaway train. For me, it's like fixing a faulty toaster, just on a much, much bigger scale. I absorbed all that loose electricity, stabilizing the grid and stopping the train dead in its tracks. Easy peasy. But as the dust settled and the sirens started to fade, something different happened. A new kind of energy started buzzing under my skin. It wasn't the familiar, comfortable hum of the city's power grid. This was wilder, more intense. A bright, crackling aura, more vibrant than I'd ever seen before, enveloped me. It felt like I'd just downed 1,000 espressos made of pure lightning. My hair was standing on end, and little arcs of blue and white energy danced along my arms. I looked down at my feet, expecting to see them firmly planted on the grimy concrete of the tunnel floor. But they weren't. I was floating. Just a few inches at first, then a foot, then 2. I was hovering in midair, held aloft by this crackling new power. The sensation was exhilarating, like the moment at the peak of a roller coaster, except it just kept going. I slowly lowered myself back down, my mind racing. What was this? I'd always been able to absorb and redirect electricity, but this was something else entirely. This was generation. I looked at my hands. They were glowing, practically buzzing with contained power. I could feel it, a thunderstorm coiled in the palm of my hand, waiting to be unleashed. I flexed my fingers, and a small, perfectly formed sphere of lightning materialized between them, spinning and crackling with a life of its own. I'd never been able to do this before. I'd always been a living battery, a conduit. Now I was the power plant. The source. A million questions flooded my mind. How did this happen? What were my new limits? Could I even control it? My thoughts were cut short by a shout from the street above. Peeking out from the tunnel entrance, I saw chaos. A man was sprinting down the street, shoving people aside, a stolen bag clutched in his hand. He had a cruel, desperate look in his eyes. Behind him, police officers were struggling to keep up. My first instinct was to just trip him, the old-fashioned way, but then I looked at my glowing hands. This was the perfect opportunity. A live-fire exercise. You could say a controlled test. I took a deep breath, focusing, trying to remember the feeling of the energy coiling in my palm. I extended my hand, not wanting to hurt him, just to stop him. I pictured a net, a web of electricity, something to entangle, not to destroy. A bolt of energy, far larger and more potent than I intended, leaped from my fingertips. It wasn't a destructive blast, but a shimmering, sticky stream of light that wrapped around the running man in an instant. He froze mid-stride, his body spasming for a second as the energy coursed over him, before his eyes rolled back and he slumped to the ground, completely unconscious. The bag dropped from his limp fingers. He was out cold. But I could feel his life force, steady and unharmed. He was fine. Just napping. The police officers finally caught up, panting and out of breath. They cautiously approached the unconscious figure, weapons drawn, before realizing the threat was neutralized. One of them kicked the bag, revealing stacks of cash and jewels. They looked from the man to the bag, and then up at me, standing at the mouth of the tunnel, my electrical aura slowly fading. Their expressions were a mixture of shock, confusion, and overwhelming gratitude. One of them spoke into his radio, his voice filled with disbelief. "Suspect is down. I repeat, suspect is down. Appears to have been, electrocuted, but he's breathing." Soon, the street was flooded with more police cars and news vans. The police commissioner himself arrived on the scene. He walked right up to me, his face grim but his eyes showing a spark of amazement. "Son," he said, his voice deep and raspy. "Do you have any idea who you just stopped?" I just shrugged. To me, he was just a criminal. That, the commissioner continued, pointing at the man now being loaded onto a stretcher. Is Silas the Shadow Croft, the most wanted jewel thief and corporate espionage artist on the planet? Interpol, MI6, the CIA. Everyone's been after him for a decade. He's escaped every prison, evaded every trap, and you just zapped him. I was speechless. I just wanted to test my new powers, and I accidentally caught a global super. The crowd that had gathered started to cheer. The sound was deafening. People were chanting, calling me a hero. It was overwhelming. Then, the commissioner did something I never expected. He pulled out a checkbook. There's a substantial international reward for Croft's capture, he explained, scribbling furiously. 20,000 pounds! And since you did all the work, I believe this belongs to you. He tore off the check and handed it to me. I stared at it, the numbers barely registering. 20,000 pounds for 5 seconds of work? This day was getting weirder and weirder. The crowd's cheers grew even louder. They were chanting a name now, one I'd never heard before. Electron Dawn! Electron Dawn! It echoed through the streets. The commissioner grinned. Seems you've got a fan club and a name. He then gestured to one of his officers, who brought over a large, reinforced briefcase. He opened it, and inside was a suit. It wasn't police blues. It was a sleek, dark blue uniform with jagged lines of orange and white that looked like lightning bolts. In the center of the chest was a symbol, a stylized dawn sun with a lightning bolt rising from it. We've been working on something for a while, the commissioner said. For someone like you. A symbol of hope. A new dawn for this city. He looked me straight in the eye. The city needs a hero. Son, it needs Electron Dawn. I looked from the suit, to the cheering crowd, to my own hands, which still faintly hummed with power. Everything had changed. I wasn't just some guy who could manipulate electricity anymore. I was something more. A symbol. A hero. I took the suit. I was the hero that this city needs.